Yes, Arsenal community, welcome back to Lead Judges TV for another episode of Albert's Talking Points. But before we get into it, people, let's smash the intro. Good evening, people. Welcome back to Lead Judges TV for another episode of Albert's Talking Points. It's been a while, people. As I like to say, always like to thank Lee for the opportunity for giving me a slot on his channel to do my own show. It is gratefully appreciated. So big up to Judges for that. People, as you know, obliterate the like button straight away and smash a like on the content and drop some comments down below what you think of the stream. So as you can see, people, player focus time, something a bit different, but not just discuss on my own. I've got two of my Arsenal family. One's already been on Albert's Talking Points before, and we've got a debutant. So I'm going to start off with JC Arsenal Analyzer. Welcome to Albert's Talking Points. Looking forward to this one, I must admit.
Yes, me too. As the thumbnail and title suggests, very underrated player, and we'll get into all the stats and info a little bit later on, I'm sure. But really do appreciate you inviting me on for. I think it's my hat-trick appearance now. So well. I must have said something right.
You've done all right, man. You've been received well, man. Don't right, yeah, man. Good to get you back always, man. You know what I mean?
Thank you very much.
Of course. When you guys are free, I'll definitely get you on. And debutant on Lead Judges TV with Albert's Talking Points, G Talks Arsenal. Welcome aboard, my friend.
No, thank you so much, man. Can only echo everything that what JC said. Massively appreciate the invite. I've been excited about this all day, man. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, no, I'm all good, man. Obviously, Arsenal flying high at the top of the Premier League. And I think, you know what, I said to you earlier, this, no better timing than to talk about Ben White. For me, one of the biggest contributors to why we started the season so well. So yeah, can't wait to get stuck in.
Yeah, like I said, when I do this show, it's I like to try and sort of do something a little bit different. And at the time when I do it and the content that comes out. So this was, to me, was a bit of a no-brainer to do a player focus, really. I've done it on my own channel, a couple of people outside of Arsenal, but this is sort of directly linked with Arsenal. But yeah, Ben White's he's been a talking point for quite a while, actually, since he's donned wearing an Arsenal shirt, really. We got the guy from. No, let me start off. Let me start off with sort of simplistic question for both of you. I'm going to come to JC first, mate. Sort of, how much did you know about like Ben White before he came to Arsenal? What was your sort of thoughts, or what kind of background of feeders that you heard about him?
So I only really knew about him from, I suppose it began when he was at Leeds on loan. I used to work with a guy who was a hardcore Leeds fan, and he always used to bang on about Ben White and how if they got promoted, he'd love to keep him. And then when Leeds eventually did get promoted, there were murmurs of teams like Liverpool, for example, that were quite interested. So at that point, when some of the bigger teams, and being a young English defender, it piqued my interest, and, he slotted straight into that Brighton team. So it kind of speaks volumes of his education, if you will. And he came from a great place, having worked under Bielsa. He produces great football players, but he's put in the hard yards. He's been on loan at clubs like Newport, for example, down in those lower leagues. So, he's no stranger to having to put in that hard work and sort of, get the respect of his colleagues. I think one of the things that surprised me, as you know, I do a lot of player analysis over on my channel, and when I done some sort of background checks and research on him, one of the things that Arteta really liked about Ben White is that I think he'd only missed sort of like 2 games in like 3 years, which is absolutely fantastic. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, prior to him signing for Arsenal, that I was one of these guys that knew him inside out and I've been tracking his career since 17 years old, because I'd be lying to you. But, the minute I knew we were interested, I did my background checks. He looked good. I didn't know which way it was going to go, as you do with a lot of these players, because he'd only played at Brighton, and £50 million is a lot of money, that English tax. So it could have gone the wrong way. as it has done with a lot of players in the past, unfortunately, because Arsenal had a bit of a bad track record at once upon a time of bringing in poor defenders. Mustafi, shall we say, 32 million. He was shocking. But yeah, I'm glad it's worked out. So far, so good.
Yeah, no, JC, good start, man. We're gonna sort of delve into a bit more. Sort of, same thing to you, but I'm gonna sort of give a bit of context for myself. JC's already alluded to it. My sort of first knowledge of Ben White was his loan period at Leeds. As JC's mentioned, he's gone through obviously a few loan systems. I think it's at Peterborough and a little bit of time at Newport as well. Yeah, sort of to you, what was your sort of first memories of Ben White, and when did he come to fruition for you?
I mean, for me, I'll be the first to admit that, you know, I don't always watch a lot of football outside of watching Arsenal or who we're playing against. You know, obviously you watch Match of the Day, you know, you keep in touch with what's going on in the Premier League, and particularly, you know, teams that we're competing with at the time, you know, whether, you know, the teams in and around us. So I'd be honest enough to say that I didn't know much about him in terms of like when he was playing in the lower leagues, or even when he was playing for Leeds. I mean, I heard the name here and there because I know a lot of football fans, some being Leeds fans. But for me, it coincided with what Brighton were doing in the Premier League. I mean, you had to have been, you know, living under a rock if you didn't hear or see or got wind of what Brighton were doing. I mean, they were doing, you know, a masterclass in the league football. In terms of, you know, they were overachieving league position. You know, they'd taken many scalps in the Premier League, and I think for me, Ben White was just one of a cohort of players in that Brighton side, you know, that were you know, making waves, that were grabbing the headlines. I mean, you know, the likes of obviously Basuma is just another one, you know, that we can touch upon. So I think that's where for me, I really kind of started to take notice. And as JC said, you know, when he was linked with a move to Arsenal, or when the link started to surface, that's when I started to look into his career. So, you know, you mentioned Newport, you know, you mentioned Peterborough. Obviously, he had the notable loan at Leeds. But I mean, even before that, if you go way back, I think he was released by Southampton at the age of 16. So, you know, he's really earned his stripes in terms of, you know, his emergence, you know, in professional football and English football. Like, he's played across so many different teams in the hierarchy of British football. So, I mean, I took a bit more of an interest, you know, once the links started to surface. But, you know, I know we're going to go a bit deeper into it, but, you know, I saw a good player. I saw the potential there. But, I mean, as JC kind of touched upon, you know, as soon as we started talking fees, and obviously the 50 million that we eventually went on to pay for him, I knew from the get-go that one, Arsenal fans, the vast majority of Arsenal fans, particularly the vocal ones, were not going to be happy. Two, there was going to be a huge amount of pressure given that price tag. And three, as you know, JC said, it was going to be a bit of a lottery whether or not he could actually come to Arsenal and kind of prove, you know, a lot of the vocal critics that hadn't even seen him play in an Arsenal shirt wrong.
No, great points. You two make good points in the sense of, hopefully I remember them, but in terms of JC, you're right in terms of, I'm not going to do content or an analysis on the player that I have no idea about. Ben White was a little bit different, which kind of ties into what G was saying. I didn't really understand the reticence in him coming to Arsenal. I think the fees exacerbated that personally as well. But the thing is, he's been playing in our league. So, and it touches upon, do you make a good point in terms of, like, sometimes it depends as an Arsenal fan, how much football do you watch outside of watching Arsenal? And the thing is with Ben White, he was prominent enough in the Championship with Leeds. I mean, with Leeds, he started every single game and played more minutes than anybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a tale in itself, and that should tell you a little bit. And JC make a good point. I mean, if in his career appearances, I think it's 127 starts out of 135 games. There's a level of consistency there that managers depend on him, and obviously he brings a lot to the table. But we're going to sort of delve into it. JC, come back to you. So someone's kind of touched on it a little bit in the chat. his first season, I'll give you a bit of context. So 2020, 2021. I actually thought, and I did watch some of the preseason games that season. I actually thought he did all right in the preseason games, personally. Listen, football's contrary to opinion. Some people thought he didn't do particularly very well. I thought he did okay. I could see the early signs of what he would bring to Arsenal and the whole thing about being a ball-playing centre-back. But there's a bit more to him about that. But then obviously, I think he got tired with the brush with our opening season defeat away to Brentford. Strong words from certain pundits that covered the game, and then followed by the whirl of the social media frenzy when there's a massive scrutiny of our players. So yeah, what did you make of his sort of first season and the pre-season and pros and cons of last season with him?
It's an interesting one because I think G mentioned it just a moment ago. When a player that a lot of Arsenal fans probably weren't aware of, let's be honest, there's a snobbery at times among the fan base in terms of the types of players that Arsenal want to associate themselves with. But because of the fee being such a large amount of money, and let's be honest, over the years, apart from a few players, Arsenal haven't really signed many players for large sums of money. So immediately, that pressure's on his shoulders from the word go. And unfortunately, he was under the microscope during pre-season. He was under the microscope in that first game against Brentford, which obviously didn't turn out too well. But whether or not you've got that Premier League experience behind you, whether you have or you haven't, there's always going to be that period where you need to adapt. And I don't think he was allowed that at times, unfortunately. He seems to take the pressure really, really well from what I've seen. And there were a lot of pros and cons talked about when it came to Ben White. The funniest one was that he doesn't know how to head the ball, which I thought was absolutely crazy. A centre-back that can't head the ball playing at the top of the game.
6'1".
Exactly. And he's immediately, he pushed those concerns to one side. But I thought he started his career really, really, really well. He can play a range of different positions. Did I ever think he was going to play at right back long term? No, I didn't think that was going to be the case. I thought that Arteta was going to have a big headache at the start of this season with the three centre-backs that he had, because Ben White played so well last year alongside Gabriel that I didn't expect him to play right back. But yeah, generally speaking, last season, the way he started last season, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary from a new signing.
No, fair play. G, before coming to you, sort of the same question, but like in terms of, I think he had 32 appearances last season in the Premier League. I'm doing Premier League based only. 141 duels won, 62 aerial battles won. Part of a Arsenal team that had, yes, we didn't get Champions League people. I'm not forgetting that. Before people go wild in the chat.
You can't forget that.
Right, yeah. But I think Arsenal got 12 or 13 clean sheets in the Premier League. And tackle success rate at 52%. So, G, coming to you, what did you sort of make of his first season? But before you come in, I think for me, like I said, I thought pre-season I saw some good positive signs. I'm always a great believer when it comes to defenders. Look, they're going to make mistakes for the equivalent of a striker. You're going to miss chances. It happens. It's part of football. As I mentioned before, the scrutiny is I don't know. Listen, I don't support any other football clubs. I'm sure they'll say the same about their players or contentious players. But as an Arsenal fan, the scrutiny on some of our players, and even during this season, to be honest with you, the games we played already, it's crazy at times. And some of the stuff he was getting last season, Gene, I've mentioned this before. Like, if I look at some of the defenders we've had at this football club, I think we've done all right to get Ben White, personally. But coming to you, to you, take the floor, man.
I think first of all, like the thing for me was that when we were linked with him, as much as I wasn't, climbing the walls of excitement, at the same time, I was not underwhelmed, as certain sections of the Arsenal fan base was. And the reason why that was, and I know we've had this conversation, and it's about, our club over the years not making the most of talent within the Premier League or talent within, leagues within, obviously, England. So
Yeah.
I felt like it was a move in the right direction. It was a Premier League proven player, good age in terms of centre back. As you've already said, amazing injury record in terms of like the amount of games he plays and the amount of games he doesn't miss. And again, with a very high ceiling in order to improve in terms of potential. So I thought it was a good signing. And I've said on many streams, on many channels, the price tag did not bother me. It's not my money. We've got sections of Arsenal fans that go on to say, we want to show ambition, we want to spend money. And then when we spend money, we criticize the club for spending it. So it's like, what is it do you want? So I wasn't bothered by the signing at all. Obviously, I was a little bit skeptical, as I will be with any signing, unless we roll out an Mbappe or Haaland. You're gonna have your reservations, but I really wanted the lad to do well. And I mean, in terms of like preseason and stuff, and going into like last season, for me, he looked a good player. And it made perfect sense for us to move for a player like Ben White, because clearly we didn't have the centre backs, as you've mentioned, some of the names or previous streams you've mentioned, we didn't have the centre backs for the way Mikel Arteta wanted us to play football. Clearly, Ben White has the attributes to do that. So the move for him made perfect sense to me. I think what happened is he joined the club at a real toxic time. We'd finished back-to-back 8th. In that summer of finishing back-to-back 8th, what sections of the Arsenal fans wanted? They wanted big names. They wanted players from PSG, from Real Madrid, from Barcelona. They didn't want Ben White from Brighton. So
no, they didn't.
What they did was they just immediately judged players based on complete ignorance. At the end of the day, they didn't actually look at the player, watch him, how he played, and think to themselves, okay, what can he bring to the team? How can he improve the team? Because the facts were there, the stats were there, the performances for Brighton were there. And if you had looked at Ben White's performances and his profile as a player, you would have seen it. But a lot of our fans, kind of look from a bit of a weird, kind of angle or eye line when they're looking at players. But I mean, I think he was definitely judged like a lot of Arsenal players at the beginning of that season, based on obviously how we started. But people seem to forget that, it was a COVID riddled side. It was a side, lacking massive amount of confidence. So it was always going to be tough. And once you then add the pressure of the £50 million price tag, everybody's expecting Ben White to come into the side and absolutely transform the team. But if you look at last season and how we performed as a team, we were very inconsistent. At the same time, if you were to ask yourself, what about our team last season was the most consistent, or what showed the most promise? For me, it was the defense.
Yeah, 100%.
For me, it was the defense. For me, where we showed a real issue or a real concern was our lack of creativity, was our inability to put the ball in the net. But when you looked and if you reflect back on last season, Ben White, Gabriel, Tommy, Katie, Ramsdale, like very quickly and very early on, after the first couple of games, when like I said, we were COVID riddled with COVID, the most promising thing for me, and the thing that I saw and thought to myself, what we're building and what has real potential, was that back line. So I don't understand why people were so critical of him and of, the other Arsenal defenders, because for me, the real concern was how we were moving forward as an offensive unit. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so I wouldn't say that he had a phenomenal season, but the reality is I didn't expect him to have a phenomenal season. At the end of the day, it's an inexperienced side. It's a side low on confidence with a relatively new manager, and it's going to take time. So I think the scrutiny, I think the criticism was very unfair, and I think if people were to really look back on last season and reflect on it fairly, I think, and people were honest with themselves, he had an actually very good season for a first season at Arsenal. And I think that could be said for that whole back line, including Ramsdale.
Yeah, great points. And I'm going to come in there, give my 2 pennies worth. But JC, you make a good point about the snobbery. I've been on about that for years. I don't know when it seeped into the Arsenal fan base, but it's a bad thing. It's a bad trait to have, because there's some very good, very established, very up and coming, very talented players within this league who are English. Listen, I've had this debate before, or I've said it on my channel, or just generally on Twitter or Instagram, whatever, any other social media outputs out there. You can't help the transfer market. If you look at the money spent on players, i.e. the Grealishes, the Harry Maguires, look, are they worth that money? No, they're not. I know Ben White's not worth £15 million, but I don't care. It's not my money.
100%.
You make a good point. The defense as well, and I said this. They obviously Ben White included in that. They need a year of bedded in. They need to identify the strengths and the weaknesses and the partnerships and the Tommy Yasus and the Ben Whites and Tierney's and Gabriels. A season to bed in. Ben White even said it himself after one of the games. I just can't remember what game it was. He's in it. He said, "Look, we've had a season under our belts with this defense and the team. You know, we've had another year. It makes a big difference. We're more physically imposing. We're better on the ball. As an Arsenal fan going to games now, there's a level of trust with our backline, including the goalkeeper and Ramsdale. And you make a good point. If you actually dig it deep in terms of last season, yes, missing out on Champions League football was a catastrophe. I understand that. But if you actually break it down and put it into blocks, our defense, there was markings and signs of very, very good potential. And Ben White was part of that. So yeah, and also as well, before it goes out of my head, before I remember, I had to cover the men's Euros. And it touches on what JC was saying earlier about in terms of, you know, if you don't know anything about a player, I'm not going to sort of, you know, bluff it and do content and whatever. And this is what I'm saying. If I don't know something about a player, I'll keep my mouth shut. And what I mean by that is, I covered the men's Euros. You know, Ben White was linked with the move to Arsenal then. And a certain YouTube content creator said, is he just another Rob Holding? Now, to me, for you to come out and say that tells me you haven't seen him play.
Yes,
but then if you haven't seen him play, don't make that type of comment. And that's what I'm talking about. That's within our own fan base. That's not even a rival fan taking the mickey or... and Jace, you make a good point. Liverpool were interested in him. Whether you want to choose to believe it or not, there was a direct link and they were interested in him. And I know, and you both know, and people in the chat, you know, when certain players are linked with Arsenal, and they don't come here for whatever reason, or maybe it might be paper talk, or there might be truth in it, and they go to another top 5 rival and they tear it up, Arsenal fans lose their head on the socials. What were Arsenal thinking of? What was Edu doing? Why didn't we look at that player? We've got Ben White now. And I said this to you two guys before. I saw Arsenal fans tweeting and putting on socials, we've got the wrong Brighton defender, i.e. Lewis and Burn.
Yeah.
But when we was linked with them players before, i.e. more so Lewis Dunk, Arsenal fans were not having it. We now get Ben White up and coming, established, great potential, and our fan base ridicule him. It's crazy to me. You made the point. He's been at the club a calendar year, not even a calendar year at the time. He's not part of the regime of some of the useless, poor defenders we've had at this football club. I'm sorry, we've had some poor defenders at Arsenal. Very poor. But we've done all right with this guy, man. But yeah, man, before I come to JC again. I don't know if you guys saw the heat map, but I saw some good information about Ben White actually in terms of his last 3 seasons in the Premier League. And you make a good point again, like in terms of the adaptability and the versatility. You know, Brighton, the right side of a back 3, 1 season. Comes to Arsenal, centre-back pairing with Gabriel. This season plays at right back. I'll send it to you guys personally, but yeah, it's a great illustration of how he's moved forward, not only in his career, the positional sense, and probably why Arteta got him in the first place. So yeah, JC, come back to you, mate. And it's just sort of come into this season. And any sort of stats you guys want to throw at any point, do so, because trust me, there's some really good stuff about Ben White, actually. I know a lot of people know, but what have you made of Ben White, particularly this season, especially playing at right back?
I'm surprised that he was picked to play there initially.
Yeah.
And I mean that respectfully. We know, as you kind of already alluded to just a minute ago, that he's played in systems where he's played on the right side of a back three. Going back to his days at Leeds, he's played as a right back. He's even played as a deep lying midfield player or a defensive midfield player, if you will. Maybe he'll play there next season. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I was a little bit surprised by it. He certainly offers something very different to Tomiyasu. Ben White likes to get a lot wider and offer that width on the overlap with Bukayo Saka compared to Tomiyasu, who likes to come inside and play more as an inverted fullback, offering support deep and allowing Saka to make those sort of more attacking runs. And in those first 4 or 5 games, whilst that relationship was being established, I think that Saka even had to go through a period of adapting, because he went through a whole season playing with Tomiyasu, where he was playing one style of football, and now all of a sudden he had more of your sort of modern day wing back, where, you know, he was on the overlap. And we've seen how effective that has been this season, where he's assisted Xhaka the week before last, and he's often getting balls into the box on that overlap. And in our last game, you know, he was very unlucky not to score a couple of goals in the first half, for example. So he's done very, very well. But what I like the most is the fact that he offers something very different compared to Tomiyasu. So we've got that variation there from a fullback's point of view. Whether he plays there long term, I don't know. But so far, so good, in my opinion.
No worries. JC, I can hear you. You just frozen, man. You just frozen, mate. You're frozen like Elsa.
The Swansea internet, mate. The beauty of it.
Oh, you're back now. We've got you.
You're back.
There we are. I did have some lovely stats, but unfortunately, I think my Wi-Fi might explode if I bring up another tab. So we'll have to save that for another day.
That's all right. Before I come to G, people, smash the like button. 44 of you in the chat. Thank you for joining us on this Tuesday evening. I forgot what day it was. But if you'll smash the like button and get them algorithms up, and follow my esteemed guests on their Twitter handles in the box and down on the bottom of the screen, and their channels as well. Subscribe, people, subscribe. Before coming to, Jason makes a good point in terms of the relationship building with Ben White and Saka, for example, and you know, he's got the ability to overlap now and underlap, and he can come into that midfield area. He's an excellent passer of the ball, by the way, as well. But yeah, G, I saw this his stats in terms of amongst Arsenal players. So for touches, passes into the final third, forward passes, and for the first one he ranked in, actually, which was quite key, was quite interesting, was passes into the final third. He ranks first in the Arsenal side. 123 passes. In the other areas, he ranks 3 in touches, 3 in passes, third in forward. I think he's second in forward passing, 43%. What do you make of that?
Listen, he's been absolutely immense. He's been class, and I think most importantly, he's been consistent. And you know, those stats speak for themselves. I saw those exact stats.
Incredible.
I also saw, like, obviously, because those are kind of focusing on him going forward. But even if you look at some of the stats of him defensively, so I saw a stat and it basically said that when you compare our season so far at this stage, last season to now, we're conceding, you know, far fewer chances on the right hand side. Well said. What that's basically telling me is that this guy's been immense defensively and offensively. You know, he's doing everything right in terms of playing on that you know, that right side. And like JC said, you know, I was surprised. I you know, going into the season, for me, if you know the way last season went, if Tommy wasn't fit, I was just expecting to see Cedric. That was kind of like, you know, my kind of default or go-to. So when, you know, Ben White started playing there, I was a bit like, okay, well, you know, let's see how this goes. But I think he's been absolutely phenomenal. I think what it highlights is his versatility. I think when you look at those stats, what that's telling you is that he's initiating attacks for Arsenal. You know, he's creating chances. What is so amazing about this guy when he gets the ball at his feet, is he can beat the press. You know, when the ball comes to his feet, he can drop a shoulder and glide past a man. He nutmegged Mason Mount the other day. Dirty.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, go on, Benny White.
Yeah.
Sorry, Benjamin White. Benjamin. He prefers Benjamin.
He's a silky, slick defender. Like he
Yeah.
really, really is. And I think when you also look at his stats, like you alluded to some of the stats in terms of passes and touches and stuff like that. I think his pass accuracy is like up in the high 80s. But what is so good about him is that, because when you look at him play, you could, and he's so smooth, and he passes a player, and you know, he can pass a 10, 20, 30-yard pass, break the lines. People will think, okay, well, he's a bit too pretty. You know, he doesn't want to get dirty or get in people's faces. But he's got that character in him too. You know, if you look at his tackle success stats, I think it's in the high 70s. You know, he doesn't often go to ground, but when he does, he makes the right decisions. You know, in some of the kind of, you know, when we're critiquing players or we're looking at players, you know, parts of the season we've said, you know, Gabriel at times, he can be a bit rash. When was the last time you said that about Benjamin White? Well, he's too rash, or you know what, like, you know, he's out of position, or, you know, he didn't sniff the danger. I can't remember the last time I watched Arsenal play and I said anything negative, you know, in his direction in terms of how he plays. He makes football.
There were a couple of occasions on Saturday, Sunday, positionally, defensively.
Yeah,
he was excellent. He got himself into the perfect position. It's not the first time.
Yeah, he makes football look easy. That's what he does. He's so calm. He's so composed, and yeah, he is a joy to watch. He is a joy to watch. So for me, this season, like I said, you know, this show, no more than perfect timing, because it's crazy when you actually think about it. You know, and not just last season, this season also. Yeah, he's come under scrutiny. He's come under criticism.
Yes.
And it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. You know, like I said at the beginning of the show, he is a major contributor as to why we are so high up in the league table. And if you can't see that, then, you know, you need to go to Specsavers, because the guy is a phenomenally gifted footballer. And the crazy thing is, he's 25, man. He's 25 years old.
You make a relevant point. Big up to John for Super Chat. Big up to you. Thank you for that, man. We're going to get that in before I forget. But you make such a brilliant point, man. And Jason, I'm going to bring you back in again and give a bit of context. So it is crazy. And I need to make this point. Because I like to make the point when I come to other pods that this is not about being a do-gooder. That's not me, right? It's not about being, I told you so. I'm doing it off the basis of that I've seen this guy play. He's been in our league. Why would I have any reason to doubt that he was going to be a success at Arsenal, unless it's going to be down to injury? Like, you're now seeing what a lot of Arsenal fans who had followed his career or done their due diligence and said, you know what, we've made a good signing here. Good on the ball. We can talk about the height thing. I saw a stat actually in terms of his. I'm going to bring it into you both now. Actually, I don't know. You guys probably saw this. I think it's this season. I'm sure it's this season. So I'm sure I haven't got it wrong. He's won 50%, 57% aerial duels at Arsenal, similar to Gabriel and Ruben Diaz at Man City. And people question this guy aerially. Listen, Ben White, our defense, by the way. If you look at teams. They do long throw ones, they do set piece corners. Arsenal have dealt with it superbly.
Yeah,
there's a reason for that. So when I saw that stat about Ben White, that was really impressive. Aerial duels, by the way, we big up Tommy Yasu, and rightly so. Aerially, he's fantastic for us. He offers us a lot. But when I saw that stat about Ben White, that was brilliant, and it just shows his pedigree that he has and how he's gelled this season, how he's been fantastic. Like we said, sort of Jason, bringing you in, sort of, you might have heard of that stat already, but yeah, when I saw that, I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, I've done a bit of research on him coming on to tonight's show, and a lot of the stats I weren't aware of. Even some of the stats that you mentioned previously with regards to you know, final third entries, passes, progressive passes. You know, he's up in the top 80 percentile as well for tackles in the final third.
Sure.
He's part of an attacking front six now that Arsenal have, opposed to the front five that we previously had, which is absolutely bonkers. But it's one of those. I think with Ben White, and it's a good problem for both him and Arteta to have, is that Arsenal have played so well this season, and there have been so many individuals that have put in so many top performances. Thomas Partey, for example, who hasn't shown any consistency up until recently. And we're starting to see the reason we signed him, for example, from
100%.
Atletico Madrid. But because of those types of performances from the likes of Martinelli this season, Jesus has come in and made an immediate impact, Bukayo Saka recently. Because of those performances, Ben White has gone under the radar because he's not that sexy football player. He's a defender. He gets the job done because he's not scoring goals and pinging 40, 50-yard passes or scoring goals against our bitter rivals like Spurs, for example. He does go under the radar, and had players, if we would have had an average start to the season, then maybe, just maybe, players like Ben White would get the praise that he deserves. But the fact that he's in and amongst that company like Diaz, who's just recently won a Premier League title, and, he gets so much praise from the likes of, Pep. He's come in one season captain of the football club because of the influence he's had at City. It's only right that Ben White, or Benjamin White, sorry, starts to get this. Starts to get.
We've got to get that right, innit?
We've got to get it right. If he watches this pod, he'll be fuming.
Yeah, he will be. He will.
He needs to start getting the praise that he deserves. When? That's the question. When is it going to happen? When is it going to happen?
You're right. You're right, and I think. Look, I can only speak for myself, and you guys can as well. You guys can as well. Like, yes, we have rivalry and banter with other football fans. Only they will deny that what they've seen this season, whether it's out of pride, whether you just don't want to admit it. And I ain't got time for that rubbish. Listen, if someone's a good player, they're a good player. If they've impressed me, they've impressed me. It doesn't matter whether it burns me if they play for that other side down at North London or Chelsea or United. If you're a good player, you're a good player, and I can admit it. Doesn't bother me. I mean, I don't get paid for it, so, I can give my honest opinions. You know what I mean. So, you make a good point. Like with the Ben White thing, it's like I said to you guys earlier before. Like, it's not about telling people I told you so, but I kind of said, I'm not sure if it's on my channel or maybe another podcast. I said, look, I'll stick my neck out line for Ben White, and anybody that knows me that well, it's very unlikely to do that for any Arsenal player, because I'm always talking about sentiment. But for me, it's not about sentiment with him. It's. I always say to people, you can park stats to one side, Opta, XG, whatever. Your own set of eyes don't lie to you. He's a flipping good player. He's a very, very good player. We should be very, very. Fortunate that we do have him, and we're starting to see the fruition of how good he really, really is. I mean, let me go to Super Chat quickly before I go in there. John, thank you for Super Chat again. Most difficult to ask about his best player so far. And JC, you make a good point about the recognition because he does deserve it. He was my man of the match on Sunday, personally speaking. I know people I had no problem with Jermaine Genius, which is quite surprised me to say that, but he gave Saliba man of the match, which was I can't disagree with. Or Thomas Partey, some people it was for. But for me, it was Ben White. I thought he's outstanding. I thought he started the game well. The G mentioned offensively and defensively, he offers a lot to Arsenal. And hopefully, we'll get on the clean. Hopefully, we'll get on the score sheet this season as well.
You know what it is?
Go on, G. Come in, mate.
You know what it is? Yeah, it's like, and I think this is what sometimes I find very frustrating about certain sections of the Arsenal fan base. It's like, when you look at the Arsenal team and you look at how well we've started the season, top of the league, I think we've only dropped, I think it's like 5 points or something like that. I think we've got 34 out of a possible 39 or something like that. Obviously, the impact, Saliba's coming to the side and he's had a huge impact in terms of his performances. But I think people seem to forget that it's a team game. So because you've got Saliba, and rightly so, he's getting the plaudits. He's a phenomenally gifted young centre back. Yeah, he's been 100%. Immense since he's come into the squad. However, stick Bellerin to the right of him and stick Kolasinac on the left. Yeah, and put Mustafi next to him. Bredgin, he will not be looking as good as he's been looking. Now,
Yeah,
that's not me saying Saliba's not a good centre back. Of course he is. He's a
Yeah, 100%.
phenomenally gifted young centre back. But the reason why defensively, we look strong and we are seeing the best out of Saliba is because we have a much stronger and well together back four. You can't look beyond the likes of Zinchenko and KT or Ben White on the right or Gabriel or Ramsdale between the sticks. You can't do that because, Saliba can't do it by himself. But the thing with our fan base, and I'm probably sure this is the case for all other fan bases, is that there always has to be a bit of a lazy narrative.
Very lazy.
Has to be. It's like if Saliba's doing well, somebody in the back line, has to not be doing as well.
Gabriel.
If Xhaka's playing phenomenally well this season, which he is, why isn't Partey playing to the same level? There always has to be a comparison, but people seem to forget it's a team game. And the reason why we're top of the league after 13 games is because as a team, we are producing good performance after good performance. So there doesn't always have to be a scapegoat, and it doesn't always have to be, a comparison or a negative to the positive. Ben White is just testament to how well we've done. And like you both have said so brilliantly, he's massively gone under the radar, which is why 100%. This show is a phenomenal idea, because he needs and he deserves the plaudits he's not getting at the moment.
Yeah. No, listen, I love Ben White. I think he's been brilliant, absolutely fantastic. And I wasn't saying it in terms of sticking my neck out on line for him to as a life and death situation. That I believed in the fact that we bought a good player.
Yeah.
And the price is nothing to do with me. Arteta identified him as somebody that was a key component into how the way he wants to play. And like you said, when you've got players around you who you can trust and who bring out the best in you, we're very fortunate at the moment with the likes of Saliba and Ben White and Tomiyasu and Gabriel and Ramsdale in goal. Aaron Rambo Ramsdale, as I like to call him, and Tierney Braveheart. But JC, coming back to you. We've got one more question before we finish up after what I'm going to say to you, but sort of a point, really, not really a question, but sort of going to get you guys' thoughts about it. And G, you make a good point about, I think you could say it's a standard thing, but listen, when the Ashley Cole and Vieira days, that's then. That was back then. It's not now. We need to make the distinction. We look at Ben White. He's come up against the good players. First game of the season, Will Zaha. I think there was a stat flying around, JC. You might have it off your head or G. Like most tackles won. I think that's joined in sort of Premier League history that day when he played against Zaha. That's not an accident.
No.
He's had tests with Son this season. Dealt with him. Mason Mount dealt with him. Like, this is not an accident. Like, this guy is a good player. He's a very, very good defender. He's had tests. He has. Just like Tomiyasu had in his first season. Dealt with them. I think that's what's been very impressive with him. Like, you're not playing against novice wingers and guys that are just come into a team, and you've got experienced, aggressive winger like Zaha, and you pocketed him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, give
one of the most fouled players in the Premier League.
Yeah. Come in, JC. Come in. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely spot on in terms of who he's faced, and I think that's not just Ben White, but I think it's a theme across the board when it comes to Arsenal. I can't remember however many games into the season it was, but it felt like every time we beat one of the better teams in the Premier League, there was always an excuse that they were either out of form or that Arsenal haven't played anyone yet. It's like when we beat Liverpool. We beat Liverpool and everyone was saying, oh yeah, but it's one of the worst starts to the Premier League in however many years. But then they went and beat City the following week, who have been unbelievable this season. So what's the narrative there?
Yeah, well said.
It's, you can't win. You literally cannot win. It's the whole thing with Spurs as well. When they were apparently playing really, really well at the start of the season and we went and beat them. Oh, they're not playing well now. Well, the other week they were.
Yeah.
So I really, really don't get it. It feels that it's for Arsenal in general and for individuals even more so, for you to get any form of praise, it just doesn't exist. It literally doesn't exist. And Ben White is a perfect example of someone so far this season that has quite literally passed every single test that has been thrown at him. And this isn't against subpar, below average teams. There's no such thing as an easy game in the Premier League anymore. It doesn't exist. You only have to look at how Fulham have come up from the Championship and now in the top 10. Brighton have gone above and beyond where anyone thought they would perform this year. We've played both of those teams in the last 6 months as well. So you just got to ask yourself the question, what more do you need to do in order to get the praise, which will probably come on to in a minute, with regards to what Ben White has to do to get in this England team?
Well said, bro, brought onto that. So, yeah, this is sort of going to be the final point, really. Gary Neville said he has to go to the World Cup. He has to go. What I would say before I ask you to, it's a simple question, really, in terms of do you expect Ben White to be picked on Thursday by Gareth Southgate for the World Cup squad? If you'd have asked me this question, and not even because Ben White's playing at right back and play well, if you'd asked me probably about 3-4 months ago, no. I probably wouldn't even have thought. I probably could have had an argument with maybe other rival football fans ago. You know, talk about. I just think now, sometimes in life it's about timing. Ben White has been outstanding. I mean, for him, trust me, there's other players of other clubs that should be going right. We're not going to get into that now anyway. But yeah, coming to G, man. For me, it's a no-brainer. But football, I want to learn about football. Nothing surprises me, but I would expect him to go because it's a squad of 26, not 22, 26. But we could be in for a shock. What do you think?
Yeah. Before I mention my thoughts on that, just want to add joint best defense in the Premier League. Conceded 11 goals, joint with Newcastle. Even the phenomenal Man City have conceded more. Just wanted to throw that in there. Will Benjamin White make the England squad? I mean, for me, he has to. And that's just based on performances, on form, on versatility, and the fact that he's a much better player than a lot of the other players that, let's be frank, probably are already on the plane. So he should make the 26-man squad. Will he make it? I have no idea. And the reason why I say that is because I have no trust in Gareth Southgate. I've said it before when I've covered England internationals before. I'm not his biggest fan. I never have been. And in terms of, I don't jump on the bandwagon or decide to kind of go online and just criticize the guy and abuse the guy. As soon as we get to tournament time, I'm behind Gareth, I'm behind the lads. But me personally, when I look at the team selection and the players that are being picked for this England team over other players, this whole theory that Gareth Southgate picks players based on form is absolutely
that's gone out the window.
Rubbish. It's absolute rubbish, because you're telling me Ben White in previous teams selected like for friendlies, he's not made the side over the likes of Mings, Dyer, and Maguire. Like just say that out loud, or just say that in a mirror without actually laughing.
He's only had 4 caps for England.
4 caps. Benjamin White, was not selected in the last England squad, but the likes of Dyer, Mings, and Maguire were. So for me, it's a no-brainer. He has to be on the plane. He's got to go to the World Cup. Will he? I have no faith in Gareth Southgate whatsoever. So I really don't know.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Joe. I'm going to come to JC to finish off. I get G's points because just what I've seen of Gareth Southgate in the past 12 months, if I'm honest. But I think Reece James is still he's still going to, I think that's out of his hands physically. Though. I don't think he'd be ready. Carl Walker, I don't know what the situation was that Reece, it looked like he was going to be out. I'm not too sure. I forgot the other players I'm going to talk about now. But yeah, Ben White, it's not just the fact he can play at right back. I think that's a bonus he can play at right back. He's just shown how good he can play at that position. But You can play him, as we mentioned earlier, in terms of looking at the 3 heat maps across the last 3 seasons for Brighton and Arsenal, playing in different positions that show his versatility. It would be absolute lunacy for him not to be picked on Thursday. But like G said, you don't know. You generally don't know. I'm not saying that because I'm taking the mick. I'm generally being serious. I don't know. There's no reason for him not to be in the squad. So coming to you, JC, to close it out, mate.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's a concerning one. It's frustrating. Is probably the best way to describe it, because as G said, it's Gareth Southgate has his favourites, which is clearly not based on form, like at all. But in saying that, the 2 things that are going in his favour at the moment is that there are injuries at right back.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of look at it from that point of view. And then also, like you said, his versatility. If he did get selected, if he did eventually get minutes, will it be at right back? Will it be at right centre back? That's anyone's guess. But when you look at the back 4, it would be crazy not to take him. Yeah, I think it would be more difficult to give me a reason right now why not to take him than it would be why you should be taking him. Genuinely, I literally can't think of any genuine reason why you would not bring Ben White to the World Cup, even if it's just as a squad player, even if he's not going to start, but to include him in that squad for depth and variety would just be absolutely bonkers. And as someone just said in the chat, there needs to be an inquiry if he's not on that plane, because I just don't understand, especially just based on his form, purely based on his form, you would take him to the World Cup. But stranger things have happened. Let's wait and see.
It's true. Listen, and the thing is, I'd make a case for. I'm not the England manager. I wouldn't want a job anyway, to be honest. But if they're going to play a back 3, right, and wing backs, because obviously Gareth is quite defensive. We've seen that now for about 12, 18 months. To me, you could do it. Listen, like I said, I would be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not there. But to me, you could have a situation. The best 2 right backs in the league this season, Ben White, Kieran Trippier. It makes such common sense that you can play either one of them on the right side and the other's a wing back. Gareth has to see that, because if he doesn't, I can't help him.
I'm telling you now, if England didn't have the injuries England have, he would not even get a sniff for that squad.
I don't think.
No, that's the concerning thing.
He wouldn't. Trust me, he wouldn't. This Gareth Southgate. Listen, I'm done trying to work out his logic and his rationale. I'm telling you now, if Reece James and Kyle Walker were fit, he would not even be in the conversation.
Yeah,
he wouldn't.
True. Yeah, even with this, what we've seen this season so far, you're right. You're 100%. I believe you. Go on, JC. Come in, bro.
No, I was just agreeing, because it just baffles me.
It's crazy. Listen, and he got, like you said, and someone made put in the chat. Lynn, big up Lynn. I'm gonna give a shout out to Lynn, man. I met Lynn at the Schooner versus Cancer event. Listen, and Saka plays on the right. That's another conversation, but that we'll say that for another time, man. Because listen,
it's staring him in the face.
There's some pundits
connect the dots.
Yeah, there's some pundits have been winding up about the England starting lineup for the World Cup. I'm like, are you guys serious? Are you really getting paid to give you this opinion? But that's another subject. But people, big up to the people in the chat. 54, smash the like button if you haven't already. Big up to the people in the chat for your fantastic interaction. Albert's talking points. Player focus, Benjamin White has come to an end, people. To thank my 2 amazing guests. Firstly, JC, welcome back, Arsenal Analyzed. Tell the people where they can find you, my friend.
Oh, well, first things first, thank you very much for having me back. Really, really do appreciate it. It's been a great show. A pleasure speaking with the pair of you on Ben White. Easy conversation, and big up everyone in the chat as well. But if you do enjoy in-depth analysis, tactical analysis on games, or really getting under the skin of certain football players, mainly signings and rumoured players of Arsenal, that's what I do over on Arsenal Analysed. Come give me a sub. If not, no dramas.
No, big up, people. You've heard it here. Go and subscribe to Arsenal Analysed and follow him on the Twitter feed as well. And G Talks Arsenal. Fantastic debut on Lee Judges TV for Arsenal's Albert's Talking Points. Tell the people where they can find you, my friend.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. But yeah, first of all, just want to absolutely show my appreciation for the invite. Like I said, I've been gassed, I've been excited all day, man, to do this. So yeah, no, thank you very much. But yeah, if you want to, obviously, I mean, the platforms I'm mostly on is obviously Twitter. That's my handle right there, G Talks Arsenal. Feel free to give me a follow. If you want to follow back, please do DM me. Otherwise, I probably won't follow you back. But yeah, in terms of where you can find me, I mean, new member of the Armory TV.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm G Talks Arsenal. If you want to hear or see me talk more about Arsenal, then please do head over to our YouTube channel, which is the Armory TV, and you will hear and see from me and the rest of the crew. I mean, we put out a lot of content with regards to Arsenal, whether it's preview shows, review shows. I've also got my own show, which is G Talks, which I will be doing episode 2 of tomorrow night, where we're going to be talking about Arsenal's title challenge. So yeah, man, hit me up, man.
Yeah, people, you heard it here. Go and follow the Arsenal man, then, people. Come on. And that's cool. People in the chat, give your virtual waves goodbye now. Smash a like I said, on YouTube and on the Twitter feed as well. I believe this is going on there now as we speak. Your host, Albert JTV, people. Big up props to judges for giving me the chance to come on the platform, man. Love to the judges, man. Big up RJ's has come up recently. Bruv, good to thank you, bruv, for tuning in. Yes, your host, Albert JTV. Come and subscribe. I've got my own channel. And obviously, come and subscribe to Lee Judges TV as well, people. My Twitter handle is at AUMO57, as you might know as well. But people, that is Albert. That is Albert's Talking Points over and out for another episode. Thank you for tuning in. Come on, you Gunners. Love you, Benjamin White. Out, people.